How's it going, guys? It's Jayton back again on the Thermo Diet podcast, and today I want to go over some jumpstart tips or some quick tips to get you started on thermo during this new year. And so I just kind of want to go through the basics and maybe through even some of the tips that are on the roadmap if you don't have the course yet, to kind of give you just a little bit of clarity whenever you're looking to do the thermo diet here in the new year. And so let's go through the different kinds of macronutrients that we can utilize and different kinds of sources that we can use to get those macronutrients. So for protein, grass-fed beef is probably going to be the best source of protein that you can get, simply because it's free of any kind of antibiotics or hormones that are in conventional beef. And red meat is typically going to be a lot more nutrient dense, and for most people it's going to be a lot easier to digest. But then you can also use things like shellfish, things like shrimp, oysters, lobster, crab, things like that. And all of these are going to be very rich in different kinds of trace minerals and things like that that are going to allow you to basically fuel your body in a way that is going to promote energy, which is the goal of the thermo diet. It's to promote energy and allow for hormonal balance to occur and to alleviate micronutrient deficiencies. And so some other protein sources could be dairy. You know, you have your especially lower fat dairy. So whenever you have like low fat cottage cheese or low fat milk or just low fat cheese in general, it's going to be very high in protein. It's also going to be very high in calcium, which is another key component of having a high metabolism, because calcium is very beneficial for not only bone health, but for overall thyroid health and steroid metabolism. And so if we don't have enough calcium in the diet, we're going to begin to leach it from the bones, and then that's what actually leads to peripheral buildup of calcium and calcification of the tissues. Is because our body increases what is known as parathyroid hormone, and then that increase in parathyroid hormones begins to leach calcium from the bones, depositing it in the blood and allowing for different kinds of tissues to become calcified. So we need to make sure that we have enough calcium in the diet to downregulate parathyroid hormone and stop that leaching of calcium from the bones. Let's see, some other protein sources. Probably the most metabolic, pro-metabolic protein source would be a good source of bone broth or gelatin or collagen. Those are going to be extremely beneficial, especially for your joints, your hair, your skin, your nails, and glycine, which is one of the most abundant amino acids in those specific proteins, are going to be very beneficial for thyroid health because it acts as a potent anti-inflammatory. It also acts as an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so it's going to slow down the firing rate of the neurons and allow for you to relax at the end of the day, allow you to fall asleep faster and get into that state of REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, a lot quicker, so you can come out of that night of rest a lot more refreshed. And so those are probably going to be the most important amino acids. And then, usually you don't want those to take up about more than a third of your protein intake, and then allow the rest of your protein intake to come from things like grass-fed beef, different kinds of shellfish, oysters. Eggs are an extremely beneficial one. And then, if you're more on the plant-based side, then you also have potatoes. Potatoes are probably going to be your best source of protein, along with a good source of mushrooms. Organic mushrooms are going to be very good for the essential amino acids. And then, in the potatoes, you also have different kinds of keto acids that are going to allow for ammonia to be flushed out from the body and allow your digestive tract to kind of be healed in a lot of cases, especially whenever you combine that with a good gelatin source. Of course, if you're plant-based, then you're not going to have that gelatin, so you're going to have to find it from a different source, if you will. But yeah, so those are the main aspects of protein, just making sure that they're easy to digest, making sure that they're very nutrient rich, and making sure that they come from a good source. A good, clean, ethical source is very important to make sure that you get a meat that is not contaminated. And then we have the carbohydrate sources. So things like, potatoes are also going to be an extremely beneficial source, and probably one of the most pro-metabolic sources of carbohydrates whenever it comes to the thermo diet. as well as things like white rice. So you have like jasmine rice, basmati rice, things of that nature. And then fruits are going to be probably, for a lot of people, they make up all of the carbohydrate source in the diet. So fructose actually is insulin independent. So it doesn't need insulin to actually enter into the cell. So it doesn't have to raise insulin to enter into the cell unless you are very insulin resistant, and then it's going to cause some problems because there's too many free fatty acids in the blood. And whenever you have too many free fatty acids in the blood, there's this cycle known as the Randle cycle, which is simply the competition of free fatty acids for glucose to get into the cell to be utilized as energy. But saying that, if you take in fructose, you don't need insulin to raise to get rid of those fatty acids to get into the cell. And so, utilizing fructose from especially citrus fruit. So citrus fruit like pineapple, oranges, watermelon is also a very good one. A lot of these like, warm nature fruits is another way to look at it. So things that are going to be more of the tropical nature are going to be very beneficial. And then things like honey, maple syrup are also going to be pretty good. And then in a lot of cases, if you can get a good organic sourdough bread, that's also going to be another source that you can use for like burgers. You can use for different kinds of toasts, like avocado toast in the morning or things like that. So those are going to be basically like the overview of the carbohydrate sources in the Thermo diet. And then you have the fat sources. Most of the fat sources, you want to steer towards the saturated variety because the saturated fat molecule is actually a lot more flexible and it's a lot more protective of the body. Rather, whenever you utilize the omega fats, so omega-3 and omega-6 specifically, which there's kind of a misconception here because the omegas are not actually essential fatty acids. Our body actually has the ability to produce omega-9, which is also known as meat acid. And so those polyunsaturated fats aren't necessary at all for an optimal functioning individual because our body has the ability to produce meat acid. And they've actually shown that the higher amount of meat acid that there is in the body, the higher the metabolic rate tends to be. And so eliminating the omega-3 and omega-6s from the diet is going to be probably one of the biggest levers in the Thermo diet that are going to allow you to take a step towards more optimal health. And so some of the saturated fat sources that you can utilize are coconut oil is a very good one, and it's also a medium chain triglyceride, so it's going to be utilized as fuel a lot more easily and taken up into the system, and it's actually very protective of the thyroid as well. And then you have things like butter, ghee, dark chocolate. A good raw whole milk is very good saturated fat source. Let's see, things like avocado oil is a good one. It stays more on the monounsaturated fat side of things, so it's not as protective as a saturated fat diet. So you kind of want to, touch base with that one every once in a while. And but those are going to be making up most of your fat sources. And so those are really the macronutrients that you want to look for. And then whenever it comes to sleep, you want to make sure that you're getting anywhere from, at least 7.5. At the very least, I would try and shoot for a 7.5 period. Even if you're not asleep for that amount of time, simply just laying in bed and allowing your body to rest is going to be extremely effective in the healing process. And so anywhere from 7.5 hours to about 9.5 to 10 hours is going to be ideal for allowing your body to heal and allowing a lot of these different kinds of detox processes to happen in the body. And so you're going to be allowing the brain to kind of reset really effectively. And then whenever it comes to training, usually you can train up to 5 days a week, even 7 days a week if you want, but I would not do intense training, and I would not do very stressful training if you're going to train that many times a week. Usually we recommend anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, especially if you're going to do intense resistance training. So we don't recommend endurance training because it actually makes the metabolism more efficient. And so whenever the metabolism is more efficient, basically what it is it's more tight with the energy. Like, it uses it more efficiently, so it's going to be very direct with what that energy is being used for. Instead, we want a wasteful metabolism, so that means that we're producing so much energy that our body doesn't have anything else to do but give that energy off as heat. And then that's whenever our metabolic rate begins to basically level up in a sense. And so whenever you're doing endurance training, you're actually going to make the metabolism more efficient, which is the opposite of what you want. So doing a good resistance training regimen throughout the year, especially whenever you're on thermo, is going to be the most effective approach. Things that are centered around compound exercises and things that are focused on progressive overload over time is actually going to allow for the most optimal results. And then I think from there, utilizing meditation for the psychological aspect and reading in a nice warm environment is going to be very effective for the psychological aspect and kind of, calming down the mind in a lot of cases because a lot of people, they can do everything right whenever it comes to the physical aspect of things and the diet aspect of things. But if their psychology is not in line with their physiology, then they're going to kind of have this disconnect that isn't going to allow for the stress hormones to downregulate properly. And then this dysregulation of stress hormones is going to basically keep you in a catabolic state. You're not going to be able to heal properly. So focusing on that psychological aspect, using different types of meditation, different activities like walking. I know Chris is really into getting 10,000 steps a day and just kind of clearing your mind, and using that as kind of a mindfulness practice is really effective. And then red light is also another very effective thing, and getting sunlight. So sunlight is very important for many different processes in the human body, and it actually helps regulate our circadian rhythm. So if you can get a good dose of sunlight before, usually noon is the best time to get about anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours of sunlight, then that's going to be very beneficial for allowing the circadian rhythm to be aligned, so your sleeping and your waking cycle to be aligned. And then it's also going to allow for proper hormonal processes to take place in the body, vitamin D synthesis to take place, and things like that. And then utilizing red light on key glands. So utilizing red light on the testes and the thyroid, in some cases even over the ovaries, have shown to have tremendous results, because red light actually increases the energy production within the cell. So it actually enhances the productivity of the mitochondria to allow for more ATP to be produced, and allow for more microcirculation and nutrient delivery to those key areas. So if you have arthritis, it's actually very good for arthritis and very effective at alleviating a lot of those inflammatory signals that are in that area. And then also, if you have like an aching joint or some kind of ailment, like you pulled a muscle or something like that, utilizing red light therapy on that area is also going to be another effective tool whenever you're going through your thermo journey. And so those are probably the biggest tips that I can give whenever it comes to starting the thermo diet. Making sure that you eliminate polyunsaturated fats, making sure that you get in good quality protein sources, making sure that you have good quality carbohydrate sources and a good quality fat source. Typically, what we like to do is like a 50-25-25 macronutrient ratio, so about 50% carbs, 25% protein, 25% fats. And for some people, that's going to change. It varies. Some people go as low as 35% carbs, 30% protein, and then they put the rest towards fat, because that's just how their foods tend to be most satiating to them in a lot of cases. And some people will go even higher in carbohydrates, all the way up to 60%, and take away some of the fats and some of the protein to allow for those carbohydrates to fuel their body. And so and then on top of that, utilizing meditation to allow for the psychology to match the physiology whenever you're on this journey, and utilizing red light therapy and sunlight to allow your body to heal. And then getting enough sleep is going to be crucial. Good quality sleep is going to be very crucial for the overall health of the individual. So that's all I got today. Thanks for watching this one, and I hope you have a great year this year. Have a good one.